but you know how it is. And Mr. Lewis, happy birthday.
Yes.
Since I miss congratulating you on your bill, I don't want to miss your birthday at least, all right? So pursuant to Standing Order 1082 and the motion adopted by the committee on Monday, June 6th, the committee is beginning its study of potential impacts of the ArrivaCAN application on certain Canadian sectors. On the first panel, we have with us Canada Border Services Agency, Dennis Vinette, Vice President, Travelers Branch, and from the Public Health Agency of Canada, Marie-Helene Levesque, Director General, Centre for Compliance, Enforcement and Exemptions. Welcome to you both. We will start with opening remarks of no more than 5 minutes, please. Mr. Vinette, the floor is yours, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Bonjour à tous. Good afternoon, Chair and members of the committee. Thank you for inviting me to participate in the discussion today. Since the start of the pandemic, the Government of Canada has taken significant action to limit the introduction and spread of COVID-19 in Canada by ensuring the safety and security of our borders. As the pandemic rapidly unfolded, the government put in place travel and health measures to reduce the risk of the importation and transmission of COVID-19 and new variants in Canada related to international travel. The Canada Border Services Agency, the CBSA, administers or assists other federal departments and agencies, as well as the provinces and territories, in the administration of over 100 acts and regulations. The Public Health Agency of Canada, PHAC, is responsible for the Quarantine Act and the orders in council that outline travelers' obligations when entering Canada. This means that any changes to Canada's border measures related to COVID-19 are under the authority of PHAC, and the CBSA works in close cooperation to implement and operationalize the measures put in place. The CBSA and PHAC co-created and launched ArriveCAN in April of 2020 to support the Government of Canada's efforts to limit the spread of COVID-19. ArriveCAN was developed to eliminate an onerous and unmanageable volume of paper forms and allow for real-time collection of information to support compliance and enforcement of critical public health measures. Like every other element of the Government of Canada's COVID-19 response, our border measures are informed by available data, operational considerations, scientific evidence, and monitoring of the epidemiological situation, both in Canada and internationally. Currently, all travelers continue to be required to submit their mandatory information in ArriveCAN using the free mobile application or website within 72 hours before arriving in Canada or before boarding a cruise ship destined for Canada. For those flying to Canada, submission needs to be completed before boarding. ArriveCAN is free and secure and is the official Government of Canada platform to provide your information when entering Canada. ArriveCAN can only be used by travelers when traveling to Canada, and all travelers must use ArriveCAN when entering Canada, regardless of the mode of entry. ArriveCAN is available to download as a mobile app, or you can create an account online and sign in online. The use of ArriveCAN, which is mandatory, expedites processing and helps protect the health and safety of travelers and our own CBSA employees. It is the fastest, easiest, and most secure way for travelers to show that they meet public health requirements. Travelers can help minimize delays by ensuring that their ArriveCAN submission is completed within 72 hours of arrival at the border with all of the required information, including vaccination evidence. The completion of ArriveCAN before arriving at the border helps to improve the flow across the border and to minimize delays. I'm also happy to share that we've had a successful traveler usage rate. As of May 2nd, 2024, over 99% of travelers in the air mode used ArriveCAN and 94% used it in the land mode. While we are moving in the direction of pre-pandemic travel levels, the reality is we are still in a pandemic. Therefore, travelers are returning to a border that is managed differently with continuing evolving COVID-19 requirements, and ArriveCAN is an integral tool to help us manage these travel through our borders and ensure we continue keeping Canadians safe from the threat of COVID-19. I thank you, and I will be happy to answer questions from committee members in either official languages. Merci, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Mr. Vinette. Ms. Levesque, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Merci, Madame la Présidente. Depuis le début de la pandémie.
Since the beginning of the pandemic, the Public Health Agency of Canada has directed the implementation of border measures to help reduce the spread of COVID-19 by international travellers entering Canada. ArriveCan has been and remains a valuable tool for the Government of Canada to administer the border measures. It is a measure for quarantine, isolation requirements, and sometimes travellers are selected randomly for mandatory testing. Although the mandatory random testing program for travellers arriving by air has been paused for the rest of June, it will resume in July once testing has been moved off-site from airports.
Remains a valuable tool for the Government of Canada to administer the border measures that have been put in place to mitigate the risks of COVID-19 associated with international travel. ArriveCan allows travelers to digitally enter their information in an efficient manner and allows the government to share this information with provinces and territories. This in turn enables the provinces and territories to contact travelers who may have COVID when they enter their jurisdiction. In addition, it enables information exchange with local law enforcement who can use the data to guide their interventions and to enforce quarantine and isolation requirements. Data collected using ArriveCan is a critical fact ability to monitor, assess, and respond to variants of concern, variants of interest that pose a threat to the health and safety of Canadians and Canada's ongoing economic recovery. It allows us to continue moving forward toward a more flexible and responsive approach to managing COVID-19 at our borders, as it helps inform public health advice to ensure the health and safety of Canadians is safeguarded. The Government of Canada has gone to great lengths to publicize the ArriveCan requirement and has undertaken several media campaigns over the last 18 months in an effort to get the word out. The most recent campaign ended in late May and was designed to reach individuals who had not traveled since the beginning of the pandemic. ArriveCan est disponible sous la forme du...
ArriveCan is available as both an application and a web portal, both of which have met high standards of accessibility. There are a number of supports in place to assist travellers when using ArriveCan, including getting online information and frequently asked questions and telephone and email helplines. Today, over 95% of travellers are compliant with the ArriveCan requirement to provide the information requested when asked, and we're working to improve awareness so that even more travellers comply.
That there have been various issues that are causing delays for travellers at the border. However, ArriveCan is not a significant contributor to these delays. The vast majority of travellers use ArriveCan successfully and without issue. For example, ArriveCan app has a 4.6 star rating from approximately 90,000 reviews in Google Play and 4.0 star rating based on more than 413,000 ratings in the Apple App Store. ArriveCan actually speeds up processing at the border. Reviewing a traveler information entered properly in ArriveCan takes approximately 45 seconds. And FAC understands that Canadians are eager to travel again and want to make complying with public health measures as seamless as possible. Based on the latest data and scientific evidence, our priority remains the health and safety of Canadians. We continue to collaborate closely with other federal departments and with our provincial and territorial colleagues as we consider the public health measures we take at the border. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. In order to stay within that 30 minutes that we had allocated, reduce the time from 6 minutes to 5 minutes. And this way we'll get the 30-minute and then move on to the next panel. Mr. Baldinelli, for 5 minutes, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I'd like to thank the witnesses for being with us today. Last several weeks, we've seen the impact of border delays at our airports and land borders and the potential impact it is having on our tourism sector. I'm going to go to Mr. Vinette. In January, you had talked to CBC, and there's a story that was called Canada Planning Technological Fixes to Making Crossing the Border Faster. And you're quoted as saying, you know, the agency has been considering technological changes to the border, but the pandemic has allowed it to break through the glass ceilings that were in the way. You further mentioned prior to the pandemic, the CBSA has brought down the average time spent speaking with a custom officer at the land border to an average of 55 seconds. With new technologies, you say you hope to bring that down to about 15 seconds. While talking to stakeholders in my community where they're facing border delays of 2.5 hours, how's that working for you?
Well, thank you for the question. Undoubtedly, the processing of travelers today with the health measures and health requirements do take additional time as compared to pre-COVID. We had been on a journey to modernize how we deal with travelers at the border for some time using technology, and that article there referenced that investment, one of which the government has announced in the previous federal budget, in Budget 2021. We termed that traveler modernization. It's about ensuring that individuals have an opportunity to control, if you will, their own passage through the border. And so ArriveCan allowed us to introduce the use of various technologies that were not available to us in the past, for which will allow us to expedite our investments and make those transformative changes. One example is that later this month, we will be rolling out within ArriveCan, the application, advanced declaration, where someone coming to the border will be able to pre-submit their customs and immigration declaration in concert with their health declaration.
So, Mr. Vinette, what's the processing time? Seconds matter. Processing times at, say, for example, land borders at the two major border points, say at the Ambassador Bridge or at the Peace Bridge in Buffalo, which is the second busiest land crossing in Canada. What are the processing times? Have they gone down? I've gotten a letter from the general manager of the Buffalo and Fort Erie Peace Bridge Authority. He states, our data suggests that currently, even those that enter with ArriveCan have border processing times that are approximately 50% longer than pre-pandemic processing times without ArriveCan. So how can you explain that to me?
Yeah, so maybe just two parts to the answer. First, on the trucking community, which, you know, in Fort Erie and in Ambassador Bridge is a large group. Our processing time for trucks remains the same as it was previously. And they've submitted their ArriveCan information, and they're able to cross with, or what we call a reusable receipt, where we reconfirm their actual vaccination
But Mr.
status.
Vinette, those trucks can't get to their inspection lanes if they're stuck behind cars that are still on the Peace Bridge because the processing times take too long. So there, in fact, it's a failure. You may be able to cross and process the truck when it gets there, but we're losing time because those trucks are stuck behind cars that are still waiting because of the mandatory use of ArriveCan. And so I'm looking again, what are the processing times for visitors that are coming over at the two largest border crossings? That'll be the Ambassador Bridge and at the Peace Bridge. And if you could, I'd like those submitted to the committee for our information.
Duly noted. We're happy to work on the statistics that you're requesting. In terms of the processing, yeah, it is about double the time, but it's not about the ArriveCan app. If we were not utilizing the ArriveCan app, it would actually be far greater. Currently, it's about meeting your obligations under the orders and councils as issued by the Public Health Agency, requiring that you be vaccinated, that be verified, and that you answer the questions in relation to your current health status.
I've got a letter here. I've got a letter here from the Peace Bridge Authority that's saying border processing times are approximately 50% longer than pre-pandemic processing times. My community is the number one tourism leisure destination in all of Canada. Generates $2.4 billion in tourism receipts. That was 2019, the best tourism year ever. And we've had 2 devastating years because of COVID. We're looking to save the 2022 tourism season. Now, Mr. Vinette, have you been to Niagara lately? Have you examined the 4 border crossings in my community alone? Do you understand the impact that the decisions on the mandatory use of ArriveCan that is having on our tourism community?
So I have not been to Niagara Falls. I was in Vancouver last week and actually saw it in operation, both in the Nexus lanes and the traditional crossing lanes. The need to verify people's vaccination status, determine whether or not they need to quarantine, whether or not they can enter under the orders in council. By receiving the pre-submission, our officers have that information validated technologically and presented to them at the border. If they had to do it, and there was a period of time where we did that, we asked them to actually show us their certificates of vaccination, and we had to ask all the questions.
So,
It took
Mr.
far
Vinette,
longer to
I'll
process.
take this
sorry,
as
Mr.
an
Baldwin.
invitation to come down, and I'd like to show you the 4 bridge crossings in my community.
Mr. Varani, please, for 5 minutes.
So I want to say thank you to both of the witnesses for appearing, and a special thank you to Madame Levesque. My wife is a senior official at the Public Health Agency of Canada, and I appreciate quite directly the amount of work that all of you have been doing at PHAC for the last 2+ years now. So thank you very much for all of that. I wanted to direct my question, my first question, to Monsieur Vinette, and just building upon sort of the line of a discussion you were just having with Mr. Baldinelli. I guess if we take it as a presumption that maintaining Canadians' safety is important, and that includes from COVID, and that includes, therefore, requirements to verify the vaccination status of people that are coming into the country, then I guess we have 2 options of verifying vaccination status. One would be on paper, and one would be via a written or on paper versus some sort of digital format. Is that a fair sort of statement from your perspective?
That is a fair statement. It's how it was actually being administered in the early days back in April of 2020 when the measures came into force.
And can you give us a sense of how long it was taking you and your team, whether that's CBSA officials or PHAC officials for that matter, when you were doing it sort of in that written paper format? How long was it taking you sort of per interaction? Do you have any sense of how long that was taking back in April 2020? I appreciate the vaccinations were not yet developed in April of 2020, if memory serves. It was December of 2020 by the time the world saw the first vaccines. But just in terms of the paper processing, can you give us a sense of comparative time doing this in paper versus doing this via digital app?
Yeah, absolutely. As Canadians were coming back to Canada in March of 2020 into April and May of 2020, it would take anywhere between 5 to 7 minutes to process an individual. We had to ask all of the question in a land border environment and capture it as an officer for each individual traveler, because we needed to make sure that the Public Health Agency had the information for follow-up compliance and enforcement. In the air sector, it was a question of having people complete a new form that had been created for that. And so therefore you had 2 pinch points. One being if they'd arrived and not completed on the aircraft, they would actually take up most of the space in the airport itself as they completed the form in order to effect their passage. And then there has a second point where the officer had to actually review the information and question the individual. And so by receiving it, close to 99% of the time from travelers in advance by air, our officers receive actually a green check mark, a confirmation that all of the information has been submitted, which has brought that processing time down significantly, both in land and in air. That said, it is still slightly higher than it was prior to COVID.
Okay, but that processing time is gone. I believe Madame Levesque had said 45 seconds in terms of checking vaccination status on the app versus what you had described as a 6 or 7 minute process if it was done on paper. Do you agree with what you heard from Mrs. Levesque?
Yes, and so it depending on the complexity of the traveling party, it's 45 seconds is a low end average for travelers, individual travelers, as well as the commercial truck sector.
And I guess it goes without saying that the longer it takes for people to be processed, the more likely there is of them congregating together on an airplane, in an airplane facility, in an airport facility, for example. So moving people through quickly actually helps reduce the potential spread of the virus itself. Is that fair?
That is fair.
Okay, and can you just tell me in terms of sort of, just have a genuine concern here about, as we move towards digitization and automation across many government processes, we see similar things happening, for example, at IRCC, for example. Is there still a small portion of the population that is sort of less technologically savvy and just requires a bit of assistance? Like, how do you overcome that portion of travelers, of Canadians or visitors to Canada who just, aren't in the smartphone world, aren't sort of as technologically savvy as the rest? So how do you address that concern?
Yeah, perhaps I'll invite my colleague to complement my answer, but we support all travelers, especially on arrival. And then we do recognize there are instances, and the orders and councils do account for some instances where individuals have been unable to provide it for various reasons. But perhaps Marie-Hélène would like to complement that.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Denis. For the Public Health Agency, as well as our partners in the airports, we use a facilitative approach. What we want to do is make sure that we are eliciting the compliant behavior, but there are some barriers that are real, and those barriers are met again with the facilitative approach at the time of processing from the fact perspective, where we allow those travelers, those specific travelers, on a case-by-case basis, and we invoke the exemptions that are allowed under the Order in Council for language reasons, barriers, physical barriers, or lack of infrastructure, for example.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Sorry to interrupt, Ms. Levesque. Thank you very much. Monsieur Savard-Tremblay for 5 minutes, please.
Merci, Madame.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairperson, and greetings to all the witnesses, and apologies for the delay. We had votes in the House of Commons, which delayed the meeting. Now, Ms. Levesque, do you have any figures, studies? What studies have analysed the app and its direct implications in terms of the spread and entry of the virus into Canada? Well, what we know is that we get information in a very short time frame, and we're able to make those verifications once travellers enter Canada, and we can do that much more quickly, and we can get information to travellers quickly so that they can comply. The information is of higher quality. We're able to follow up in a shorter time frame with travellers who are subject to the border measures. That has been recognised by the Auditor General of Canada as being a vast improvement since the development of ArriveCan. Question: well, what about traceability? Has it had a positive impact in that respect? Exactly, yes, it has. Thank you very much. In your recommendations, and we know that it's politicians who decide, but we know that Public Health does submit recommendations. What are the prerequisites? Where do you draw the line in the sand as far as when to lift the requirement to use the app? Dr. Tam recently said before a parliamentary committee that the pandemic isn't over. So we want to absolutely continue to get this information and have it at our fingertips so that we can turn on a dime and act quickly in the case of positive cases. And this was what occurred with Omicron, for example, where we needed to call on our database of travellers who had recently entered Canada, travellers who thought that they wouldn't be subject to quarantine, but with the new orders in council had to be subject to a quote-unquote surprise quarantine to protect Canadians. But Ms. Tan said recently that the 2 doses were perhaps not enough. Could ArriveCan be updated to take into account a 3rd dose, i.e. a booster response? I won't speak to vaccination. That's not my bailiwick. I can defer to my colleagues to speak to that if the committee sees fit. But what I can tell you is that ArriveCan is regularly enhanced and improved with new versions and updates, and we have been adapting to new information requirements, and sometimes requirements are lifted as the science evolves on the issues. So if I could just sum up what you've said. Currently, the app is in effect. There's no plan There's no green light or red light that gives you the sense that if you reach a certain number of cases of COVID that have crossed the borders, if it's that number of cases is really low, that's not a tipping point whereby you recommend the lifting of the requirements. It doesn't work like that. Is that what you're saying? Response. Currently, and we're preparing for a new wave, and we've heard that the pandemic is not over, so we've kept ArriveCan in place, and we're going to continue to follow science and collect the digital information of passengers that enter Canada. Thank you, Ms. Levesque. If I have some time left. Excellent. Okay, I'll be very quick. Mr. Vinette. I know a 75-year-old woman who had technological issues, and because she wasn't able to complete her ArriveCan for that reason, she had to quarantine upon arrival. How did that occur? How's that possible? Response. Folks have to comply. We have been quite flexible from the outset and helped Canadians to complete their ArriveCan forms. We do take into account the various concerns of some individuals, and we're working hand in hand with the Public Health Agency to lift requirements on travellers who should be exempt for technological or other reasons. Thank you very much.
Mr. Massey for 5 minutes, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to our witnesses. It's kind of interesting we're dealing with this now. During the start of the pandemic, I had to fight like heck with a union to get our CBSA frontline officers vaccinated because they were left off by the department for prioritization of vaccinations. Despite dealing with thousands of cases.
Mr. Massey, hold on a second, please. We're having difficulty in hearing you.
Mr. Massey, your headset's not properly selected. If I can ask you at the mute button to click on the upward arrow, please let me know what is checked off. Oh.
Yeah. Internal microphone. The microphone.
Oui, parce qu'actuellement, il n'y a aucune interprétation.
Right now, the interpretation service has been suspended, says Mr. Samuel Tremblay.
Is this working?
It doesn't appear to be connected properly. So on the
The microphone's not connected. The speaker is.
Does that work?
I think so. Give it a try.
Okay. Yep. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hopefully that
Good.
works.
All right, continue, please.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Speaker. Apologies. Thanks for our witnesses. I was just mentioning that we had to get our frontline officers vaccinated. They were left off the priority list at the beginning, so it's important that we recognize their safety. Maybe really quickly to Mr. Vinette, I'm concerned that ArriveCan is going to be made permanent. Has there been discussion about making it a permanent feature for the Boulin border crossings?
At this time, it has not been. This is purely the vehicle by which we capture the health requirements at the border, and so it's tied very closely to the ongoing orders and councils.
Okay. And with that, every time that you created the ArriveCan and then subsequently with the updates, are you consulting the Privacy Commissioner? So the Privacy Commissioner was consulted for the original ArriveCan, and when you update it, are you continuing to consult the Privacy Commissioner?
I would have to double check in regards to each individual release, but consistently throughout, and maybe Marie-Hélène, I see you nodding, we have been engaged with them.
Okay, just want to make sure that maybe we can get a follow-up on that just to double check. With regards to the Windsor-Detroit crossing, where I'm from, the tunnel bus is not operated because this is the only place I believe in the world where we actually have a foreign bus go into the Detroit area, the foreign bus being, of course, Canada, and do routes, including most recently for the Tigers and other games and even commuting. It can't operate with the ArriveCan. Has your department reached out to the City of Windsor that operates the only bus service that we have internationally is to trying to support them to be able to use ArriveCan through their bus system? It's suspended right now because they have to literally police it themselves, and drivers can't do that.
I will have to take that one back. I've had the pleasure of riding that bus to a Tigers game, and so I know what you're talking about, but I'd be happy to bring it back to the committee with a more fulsome answer.
Okay, that'd be helpful. Yeah, no, I was for the first time last week, and there was a 2-hour wait, and it's not only just the congestion that's added to. My concern is the border wait times that have kind of increased now, and we're still right now driving people away because they're afraid of ArriveCan. If I can quickly go to Mr. Levesque, what type of media company has there been a media company part of the publicity for ArriveCan, and how much advertising has gone in the States? I'd like to know what have we done to advertise this to the Americans with regards to ArriveCan.
So I'm going to have to take back the question on the specific company. I'm not familiar with the name of the company. I know that we have rented some billboard space on the U.S. side at the as we approach some of the major border crossings, but we can provide some additional information on that with the specific locations and companies.
Okay. It'd be interesting too to get a comparison when what Western Hemisphere Travel Initiative was brought in. It was devastating to the tourism issue, and we've subsequently still have never recovered from that. That's the requirement of a passport in the United States, back and forth. So I'd be interested to see how much American advertising, how robust the campaign's been, and then also what's left over to continue that if this is going to continue to be an issue. Can you at least outline, though, whether or not there's been more than just billboards? Has there, and how much money has been spent so far in advertising in the U.S.?
I don't have the exact amount of money that has been spent in the U.S. I don't. I will have to take that question back. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. That's fine. That we can get that back to the committee. Just be interesting on how we compare that. Lastly, I had a positive response from the Minister of Public Safety yesterday. I've been calling for a safe border task force, so a working group that's a management group involving the operators, the tourism industry, and others, logistics teams and so forth, to actively work on being proactive on the border. Is that something you think that the agencies would support? We used to have that type of an operation before under a number of different years ago, but we don't have it really right now. So what type of collaboration is taking place? And do you think you'd be open to that collaboration, Mr. Vinet and Ms. Levesque?
Yeah, absolutely. We've taken as many measures as we can to work with local stakeholders to really kind of promote both the ArriveCan app, the requirements at the border, but also to analyze how can we do, the passages as safely as possible for the travelers and our folks. We're heavily engaged right now with the Toronto Airport Authority to deal with some of the challenges there in that complex ecosystem. So very happy to support my minister in that effort locally. Thank you.
Do you have any time left, Madam Chair?
13 seconds.
Okay, I'll say thank you. I disrupted the hearing with my audio, so thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I want to thank the witnesses for appearing today. I will suspend briefly so we can bring on the second panel, please. For the benefits of our second panel. Please wait till I recognize you by name before speaking. Please click on the microphone icon to activate your mic, and please mute yourself when you're not speaking. If you have interpretation options at the bottom of your screen of either floor, English or French, and a reminder that your comments go through the chair. On the second panel, we have with us from the Canadian Chamber of Commerce, Mark Agnew, Senior Vice President, Policy and Government Relations. From Customs and Immigration Union, Mark Weber, National President. Destination Northern Ontario, David McLaughlin, Executive Director. Tourism Industry Association of Canada, Beth Potter, President and Chief Executive Officer. And from Tourism Windsor, Essex, Pelee Island, Lynette Bain, Vice President, Destination Development. Welcome to you all. We will start with opening remarks, and then we will proceed with rounds of questions. Please, Mr. Agnew, would you start us off?
Well, Chair and honorable members, thank you for having me back. The committee, it's a pleasure to be here in person to do this for the first time in quite some time. And I think also it's a very welcome thing from the Chamber standpoint to have this study being done as the travel season begins to ramp up for the summer. To say that the pandemic has been a disruption for international travel is certainly an understatement for our members. We've gone through both the decimation of complete travel flows to now the pendulum swinging the other way with travel ramping up and backlogs being seen at key points of entry, as you've all seen reported in the media. Executing effective border policies is not an option for us given the criticality of travel for the economy, whether it's business or tourism. We must get it right to ensure that Canada remains an attractive destination for travelers. Given the long lead-in time for event planning, organizers will take decisions today that will be felt for 12 to 18 months out still in the future. I want to turn to the committee's main topic of interest with the ArriveCAN app. The Canadian Chamber has been a long proponent of digitizing border procedures to support contactless travel. Unfortunately, the ArriveCAN experience has proven difficult at the border for our members and businesses across the country. The first point to note are the duplications that the app has created. The traveler experience has been complicated by the diffuse places that the same information has to be inputted in by that individual. As someone who has traveled recently outside of the country, it's striking that information that I'm providing is both to the airline as well as through the app in more than one place. The second point are the data requirements for the app, particularly for tourists from the U.S. that are engaging in day trips. Travelers that would engage in day trip activities simply wouldn't have things like a Canadian address. And this directly impacts border communities, and so that's something that we've heard from our chambers that are in those towns, in those parts of the country. Third are the concerns with universal access, which were touched upon in the first panel that this committee heard from. Although, I'm fortunate enough to have the tech literacy to use the app, there are many travelers, particularly elderly travelers, again, as was stated earlier, who do not have that tech literacy. In preparing for this committee appearance, I was astounded to read actually a recent article by the CBC about a company in Maine that's monetized the services to Canadians that are going back into New Brunswick and helping them fill out the ArriveCAN app for $5 a service. And certainly that's not something that we'd want to see as a business community. And of course, there are also difficulties for people whose first languages are not English or French. You've heard already a bit from the officials that appeared as to the uptake statistics that the government is seeing for the ArriveCAN app. I think what I would say, though, to sort of build on that, is that with the contact time that a border officer is spending with a traveler, certainly that has gone up quite substantially, and border infrastructure wasn't designed for those types of wait times, and I think that's another key factor to bear in mind. Now, this isn't to say to scrap the app. As I noted a moment ago, digitizing border procedures is vital. We instead must reorient the app to focus on streamlining customs procedures, as well as see what sort of manual alternatives may be needed in reserve. Ultimately, the app is in large measure a reflection of our country's border policies. The announcement last week of suspending randomized testing and moving testing out of airports was a welcome development, as was this week's announcement of partially lifting vaccine mandates for travelers. However, there is certainly more work to be done. For example, the decision to lift outbound vaccination requirements may be welcome, but maintaining it for inbound travel will certainly continue to create pain points as you have unvaccinated travelers leaving the country, but then facing requirements when they come back in that, of course, as we know, do cause additional time with border officers at points of entry. With the summer travel season here and the last 2 seasons being missed, we certainly don't have the luxury of time to get this right for businesses all across the country. Thank you for your attention. I look forward to your questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Agnew. Mr. Weber, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to appear before you today as a witness as part of your study on the potential impacts of the ArriveCAN app on certain Canadian sectors. My name is Mark Weber. I'm the National President of the Customs and Immigration Union, which represents personnel working for the CBSA, the Canada Border Services Agency. Regarding the matter at hand, I'll be direct. If we're to look at the impacts of the ArriveCAN application in terms of efficiency of operation and facilitation of cross-border travel, then there's little doubt from the perspective of border operations as far as border officers are concerned. The last few months have shown that ArriveCAN neither facilitates cross-border travel nor does it improve operational efficiency. In fact, it does exactly the opposite. Every border officer working on the front line will tell you that the implication of the ArriveCAN application has seen implementation of the ArriveCAN application has seen processing time skyrocket. Where a port of entry processed 60 cars per hour previously, we're now looking at about 30 cars an hour, if not less. At land borders, as far as traveler operations go, this means cars waiting for hours and sometimes even being redirected to other ports further away. At airports, this means travelers piling up inside and outside of the customs area. In all locations, really, it translates into a frustrating experience for all involved. In these scenarios, ArriveCAN is not always the only culprit, but it always does play a role in making the process more complex, especially for the traveler. While ArriveCAN was introduced to collect public health data, it is the tool itself that was more often than not the problem. Even more troubling is the fact that the implementation of ArriveCAN by the CBSA follows the same pattern of an over-reliance on automated technologies that we've seen before with the primary inspection kiosks or the pick machines that you see at airports. Not only do these technologies have the effect of making the border noticeably less efficient by lengthening processing times, they also contribute to a decrease in border security, weakening the integrity and safety of our borders. Ultimately, if the government and its agencies wish to facilitate cross-border travel along with the flow of commercial goods, then ArriveCAN is really a step in the wrong direction. Technology absolutely has its place, but it should be used to help travelers and assist officers, not hinder them. By that metric, ArriveCAN simply has not and does not work. It's my hope that the union's input will assist this committee in your important work. I thank you, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Weber. Mr. McLaughlin, please.
Thank you, and thank you for the opportunity to speak before you today. I'm David McLaughlin, Executive Director of Destination Northern Ontario, but I'm also a tourist operator, having grown up in the industry, and my family operates one of the largest fly-in fishing and hunting operations in the country, and this is our 65th year of business. Destination Northern Ontario, we're a not-for-profit tourism organization that looks to grow the tourism sector through programming and product development, investment attraction, workforce development, and industry training, and of course, marketing. Northern Ontario is a large region, roughly the size of France and Germany combined, with a robust and pre-pandemic growing tourism sector. Before COVID-19, the region saw 8.5 million visits, generating $1.6 billion in tourism receipts and roughly $500 million in tax revenues for 3 levels of government. In 2019, 4.9% of visitors were from overseas markets, and new visitors from the U.S. contributed $500 million in tourism revenues. The land border is of unique importance, as 94% of all visitors to Northern Ontario arrive via road. I think we can agree that the tourism, travel, hospitality sectors have been the hardest hit of any sector impacted by the global pandemic. And I want to thank all the members for all the support that they've given the industry over the last 2 seasons. However, the hardest hit has to be the resource-based tourism sector, which is very dependent on the U.S. market. And as you move from east to west to Northern Ontario and get to the Lake Superior region and the Northwest, virtually 100% of clients for our iconic Canadian lodges, camps, flying outposts come from the U.S. This is due to demographics, proximity to market, and market size. And the last 2 years have been extremely difficult, with the region losing $1 billion in tourism seats from U.S. guests, and the RBT sector has had tremendous difficulty in attracting domestic business. We had hoped that this year we would see a turnaround. However, a recent survey completed by Nature and Outdoor Tourism Ontario shows that the sector has recorded $100 million in cancellations in May. And while the reasons do vary, the vast majority cite border restrictions. And I can confirm, as an organization, this is what we're hearing from operators and what we can confirm from our own experience in our own lodge business, where we've seen 70 cancellations in May. And again, all citing border restrictions. That represented about 15% of our business. And would like to say that cancellations continue to outpace new reservations. Recently, the Tourism Industry Association of Ontario, in their newsletter, indicated that border crossings in 2022 are about 50% of 2019. And I did submit both the Notice Survey and Tile newsletter to the committee. And while the Arrive Canada app is easy to use, works well, and as a resident of a border community in Sault Ste. Marie, I've easily used the app from the perspective of a visitor to Canada, and especially for Americans crossing at the land border. It's our opinion that the statistics show that the app and cumulative impacts of other border restrictions are returning visits from our friends south of the border. This is a huge loss of revenues for our operators and tax revenues for government, These are new dollars to the Canadian economy that positively impact our balance of trade. I would assume our Northern Ontario experience is repeated for other regions in Canada. Simply said, our sector would like to see a suspension of the use of the ArriveCan app at our land border as soon as possible, and a cessation of all other border restrictions, especially as financial supports for the tourism sector have been withdrawn. We need to level the playing field with other destinations. So again, thank you for the opportunity today, and look forward to answering any questions.
Thank you very much. On to Ms. Potter.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Mon nom est Beth Potter et je...
My name is Beth Potter, and I am the CEO of TIAC. My remarks will be in English, but I would be pleased to respond to your questions in French during the question and answer period.
Making my remarks, I want to acknowledge that we're gathered here on the unceded and undisturbed territory of the Anishinaabe and Algonquin territory. TIAC serves as the national advocate for Canada's tourism industry. We represent thousands of tourism businesses from coast to coast to coast and across the suite of sectors that make up our industry. In carrying out our mandate, we work closely with our Indigenous tourism industry partners as well as our provincial and territorial tourism industry associations. To put my comments related to ArriveCan in context, I first share with you some background which I believe is important for you to know, especially from an international trade perspective. Prior to the pandemic, tourism employed 1 in 10 Canadians and was a $105 billion a year industry. We were an economic powerhouse, one that was outpacing Canada's overall GDP growth for years. Of that total spend, 22% or $23 billion a year was the result of foreign travelers coming to Canada. We were welcoming a record 32 million international visitors, 22 million of whom stayed overnight. U.S. travelers accounted for 75% of all international visitors. Just 1 year later, things had changed dramatically. Total tourism spend decreased by half, and spending from foreign travelers in Canada dropped to just $4 billion, a decrease of 83%. The number of overnight foreign travelers dropped to 3 million, a decrease of 86%. And the tourism industry lost 400,000 jobs. So it is no exaggeration when I say that tourism was the first hit, the hardest hit, and will be the last to recover from this pandemic. Our industry now seems to be starting to turn a corner after having lost 2 full travel seasons. We are really hoping that this summer we'll see a significant resurgence in tourism. People want to travel. There is a pent-up demand. The latest data from November of 2021 show that tourism's GDP was 78% of what it was in January of 2020. So we're making progress. The latest projections estimate that international tourism may not recover until after 2025, but domestic tourism should recover by the end of 2023. My colleagues have already talked about the fact that international tourism brings new money into our economy, and it's something that we have to continually remember. Now I'd like to turn my thoughts to the ArriveCan app specifically. When it was first introduced to curtail the spread of COVID-19 into Canada, all travelers, with limited exceptions, were required to provide mandatory travel information before and after they entered the country, whether by air, land, rail, or marine vessel. And they must submit the information within 72 hours of arrival. If an inbound traveler does not submit using the app, they may be denied boarding their plane or cruise ship or entry into the country if crossing at a land, rail, or marine border crossing. Despite all best efforts, we all know that COVID spread across Canada, and the Omicron variant in particular spread very quickly last December and January, even though the mandatory use of ArriveCan was in place. I would argue that the mandatory use of ArriveCan is no longer needed for COVID-related purposes. I would concur with my colleague, Mr. Agnew, that looking for a digital adoption process to smooth the entry of travelers, international travelers into the country is something that we have been advocating for. With pre-departure and arrival testing now eliminated in pretty much every country, It no longer makes sense to force travelers to use ArriveCan when entering Canada to prove vaccination status. And with yesterday's announcement around the end of vaccine mandates for domestic and outbound travelers, the point is even more sound. ArriveCan has not been proven to be the effective tool to stop COVID. It is largely viewed as a hindrance to travel, and it is causing significant delays upon arrival in Canada. There are a host of other issues related to the app, which my colleagues have also spoken to. So I would just finish with pointing out that on public transit, in major stadiums, and in restaurants across the country, proof of vaccination is no longer required. In fact, masks are not even required. And yet, when you cross the border into Canada, you have no choice but to use the app. Something in this strikes us as a bit off, and we need to see a level playing field. Travel and tourism is the only industry that still requires or still has restrictions associated with participation in the activity. Every other industry in the economy does not.
Thank you very much, Ms. Potter.
Thank you.
I go on to Ms. Bain, please, for no more than 5 minutes.
My name is Lynette Bain, and I am the Vice President of Destination Development with Tourism Windsor Essex Pelee Island. We are the official destination marketing organization for the regional tourism industry. As a not-for-profit organization, we are dedicated to promoting and selling Windsor, Essex, and Pelee Island as a remarkable destination for tourists, convention goers, and business travelers. I'd like to thank the Standing Committee for inviting me today to share insights on the ArriveCan app. What you will hear from me is not that different from my colleagues, but it does need to be heard again. During the initial phases of the pandemic, the federal government launched the mobile app, which streamlined the process for travelers to submit information regarding their arrival in Canada, alongside their quarantine plan. The application was useful in allowing all traveler information to be processed quickly and transmitted to the relevant government agencies, which was essential for travel during a pandemic. Now, at this time, with the pandemic moving towards an endemic, with 82% of the total Canadian population being fully vaccinated, with hospitalization rates being greatly reduced over the past few months, and with so many protocol measures having been removed at the provincial levels, this is the time to look at removing the ArriveCan app at the border as well. In this case, we are in agreement with the provincial body TIO, the Tourism Industry Association of Ontario, on removing these barriers to travel. While the app did serve its purpose during the height of a pandemic, it has also been viewed by travelers as a potential deterrent. Being a heavily cross-border market, our top attraction, Caesars Windsor, the largest casino resort in Canada, and our award-winning Epic wineries have lost a third and 25 to 50% respectively of visitation from the US. The Meshedre and Mitchell families from Epic Wineries have expressed to me that they've seen a 50% decline in US visitation when compared to 2019. Some have viewed the app as a hassle, especially if they were not aware of it, needing to complete it beforehand. While we realize that there have been efforts to scale back the app significantly in terms of the number of questions and steps involved, including having a quarantine plan in place, it is still time consuming for the travelers. Our destination largely depends on spontaneous rubber tire travel, meaning they drive to Windsor, Essex from neighboring states such as Michigan and Ohio for day trips, long weekends to visit friends and family. These visitors tend to spend twice as much as domestic travelers. Having any additional encumbrances can lead this highly coveted demographic of travelers to go elsewhere. And now more than ever, we need to reignite this market as they play a significant role in bringing expenditures to our local economy, historically accounting for almost 50% of our annual 5 million visitation. There is a clear pent-up demand for global travelers to come to Canada, and we need to embrace this opportunity now. Otherwise, the desire to switch to other destinations, which are hassle-free or with less restrictions than what is currently being enforced here. Seniors and people who do not have access to a smartphone or who choose to turn off their phone data when crossing an international border are struggling with the ArriveCan app as well. The app technology combined with the app itself have created confusion at the border, which has contributed to significant delays. Let's not forget about the unvaccinated, which constitute 33% of Americans who have not even been able to cross the borders based on these restrictions in place. Ultimately, it needs to be determined if the ArriveCan app has any substantial benefits at all to the community at large. And at this time, given the aforementioned progress made over the COVID-19 virus, it appears the benefits of the app are negligible. It should also be enunciated that symptoms from an infected person with the current strain of COVID-19 can be between 2 to 4 days, and visitors coming back from day trips or long weekends may not even have any symptoms until after they have completed the ArriveCAN app. Studies have also postulated that approximately 60% of the population could be asymptomatic or pre-symptomatic, which again would render the ArriveCAN app a moot point, as symptoms would not be exhibited at time of crossing the border. Suspending the vaccine mandate for domestic and outbound travel would be a welcome move from the federal government towards normalizing travel. As Canada is viewed as the most desired foreign travel destination by Americans at this time, it is important to not only retain this mindset, but to build on it through the various stages of the purchase funnel. And as Beth mentioned, our tourism industries face the most significant decline in active businesses. While on the road to recovery, tourism has not kept pace with the rest of the business sector. For our local tourism-related businesses to return to some form of normalcy, restaurants, accommodation, attractions, festivals and events, shops and districts themselves, we absolutely need a clear path for the traveler, which does not create hesitancy, doubt, frustration, or a complete disinterest in coming over to explore our region, the province, or the nation. To have this much needed industry and driver in our economy return to pre-pandemic level, one of the key considerations at bringing back our most valued geographic markets, the US, would be incumbent to suspend the use of the ArriveCAN app to encourage these travelers to return to Canada in a more streamlined manner without any complications or delays at the border. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Bain. Okay, on for Ms. Ferrari. Welcome to the committee for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you. Lots of familiar faces. Nice to see you. Thank you to all the witnesses. I'm going to start with Mr. Agnew, if I may. Have you reached out to or had any conversations with the government directly about your concerns to ask to reevaluate the ArriveCAN app?
So we've been talking to the government all throughout about all the various, travel measures. We haven't done a major push sort of in traditional advocacy terms on the ArriveCAN app, but certainly, we've been having our views well stated on the public record. So I think, where we are is not going to come as a surprise to anyone.
Okay, thank you for that. And I'd like to move to Mr. Weber. Mr. Weber, I thank you for your candid and honest feedback of the app, and the tool itself is the problem. It's a step in the wrong direction. These are some quotes coming from you: has not, does not work. My question to you is, do you think it should be fully removed, or do you think it should be changed or modified to work better?
Thank you for the question. Public health measures are not really our territory to comment on. What I can tell you is that the numbers that were provided to you by the CBSA earlier, where it said that 99% of air travelers, 94% of land travelers have the app completed, is absolutely false. Those numbers are the percentages completed after we helped them complete the app. Eastern Townships branches, the numbers were closer to 60%. As an example, overall, we're looking closer to 75-80% to complete it. Essentially, our officers now largely work as IT consultants. You have land borders that have essentially become parking lots for us to help people complete the app. The biggest fear that we have as well is that other than the public health measures, that the use of this app is going to be expanded beyond those simple questions. Technology, again, we've seen the effects of it at airports, as I mentioned, with the PIC kiosks, greatly reduces our border security and really takes an awful lot longer to go through than it does to simply speak to a border services officer. We can process someone at twice the speed as a machine does. The ArriveCAN app, even if it were to be removed, is just a small part of the problem. Our frontline operations over the years, because of this over-reliance on technology, our numbers have greatly reduced. Some ports were looking at half the number of frontline officers as we had even 5 or 6 years ago. So even with the app gone, we are going to be seeing major delays at most of our ports of entry.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that. And I just want to go back to you again, Mr. Agnew, because, you said some pretty disturbing things. The fact that people are monetizing on those who are not able to use the app is a major concern. I've been flooded my constituency office with elder, senior people who can't use it. They have Blackberries. They don't have smartphones. 2 things have been proposed, and I'm curious on your feedback on them. Drop it at land, as well as lose the 72-hour prerequisite. What are your thoughts on that?
I think whatever we do for land, we probably should do for air as well. I mean, if I look back at where we've had a lot of member complaints since the start of the pandemic is just the diffuse rules that exist between different modes of travel. So I think whatever we do needs to be consistently applied. In terms of the question on, what to do with it, I mean, I think probably a suspension, in the short term would be a pretty, shrewd but also practical move to, ease up some of the congestion. It is going to take time to pivot this into a customs clearance type app. I believe the previous panel, CBSA, if I heard them correctly, said they were moving down that direction. But even retooling it in that way will take time. In terms of the 72-hour piece, I mean, to me, whether it's 72, 48, 24, or 5 minutes, you're still going to encounter a lot of these same problems with particularly elderly folks, people whose first language isn't English. So again, I don't think that is going to really fundamentally change the issue.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that. And to Ms. Potter, do you have an estimate on the contribution that ArriveCan app would have been financially? And I know you talked about going from $105 billion industry to $4 billion, loss of 400,000 jobs. Where do you think ArriveCan falls into responsibility of that?
I think that's really hard for us to understand. I do think that we've seen all border restrictions have a massive impact on the return of our industry, and certainly has put Canada behind from a competitive standpoint with the other, at least G7 countries, but many other countries within the world when it comes to regaining our travel and tourism portfolio.
Thank you very much, Ms. Potter. On to Mr. Sheehan for 5 minutes, please.
Well, thank you very much, Madam Chair, and thank you very much to all our witnesses for this really important testimony for a really important part of the Canadian economy. And I, for one, spent I'd say most of my life in the tourism industry. I think that David would be well aware of. I was a sales and marketing manager for the largest independent hotel in Northern Ontario. I managed Searchmount Ski Resort, which was the largest mountain, as we used to say, between the Rockies and the Laurentian, and used to be chair of the Sioux College Hospitality Advisory Committee. And so I totally get what everyone is saying and how important this industry is. I met my wife; she was working in the tourism industry. We bought a house together, raised our family. So what we need and ought to do and make sure that we continue to support the tourism industry. So, Madam Chair, as I introduce myself to some of the panelists that don't know me, I want to ask David, how important were the supports, including the wage subsidy that David and you and a whole bunch of other people had advocated so strongly for those changes that had happened, and some of the comments, perhaps, David, about some of the supports that are recently been passed through the 2022 budget to the tourism industry to continue to support you as you recover, as we now start to see, levels of travel increasing, which is a good thing. So perhaps some of those comments, David, of what kind of supports have helped the industry and what kind of supports will continue to help the industry.
Yeah, thank you for the question. And certainly the wage subsidy was huge for the tourism sector in Northern Ontario, and especially for those who were dependent on the U.S. market and unable to attract the domestic visitor. And just in terms of our lodge, we went from 500 customers in 2019 to 52 in 2020, and with the wage subsidy, we were able to protect our core staff of 6 to working for us. And last year, we had a bit of a rebound. We were up to 200 guests. Again, that wage subsidy meant that we were able to keep 8 staff working, including 2 students for the season. So that primarily to us has been the biggest support. I know through the Tourism Relief Fund and FedNor, a lot of properties have applied for that as well. I know some of the programs through the CFDCs. In our instance, we did take out a loan with our CFDC because we didn't want to fall behind in our capital upgrade program and purchasing boats. We didn't want to sting, the marina for the boats and motors that we had ordered and leave him hanging. So, even though we knew we were only going to have 52 customers, we'll still purchase those. But in the Northern Ontario and especially the RBT sector is not going to recover until the U.S. visitor can get across. And I think Lynette talked about the vaccination rate in Michigan or overall, and it's only 56% in Michigan, so it's quite an uphill climb for our sector. And using the app, I just I'm not an epidemiologist, just don't see how it makes it safer for us, because I can go to Mackinac Island next week, the largest tourist attraction in the U.S. Midwest, and spend the day and hang out with all kinds of people that are ineligible to come to Canada. Yet I can come back because I'll use the app. It's there was a time and place, but we just need to look at what we can do, to remove restrictions where we can and get people moving again.
David, and I hear that absolutely, and where I live, every morning when I wake up and have my coffee, I open up my window, I can see the United States. And, we know that in Michigan, their vaccine rates were, in particular, just across the border, were significantly smaller than Canadians, which has resulted in their COVID-19 cases. Back in the day when the borders were closed, just in Michigan alone, rivaled all of Canada's COVID-19 cases. So that was really important. And both you and I also lived through 9/11, where the passport was introduced. And so when the passport was introduced, as everyone here knows that was paying attention at the time, the Americans didn't go and get their passports. They just, at the time, and
I'm sorry, Mr. Sheehan, your time. I'm sorry, Mr. Sheehan, your time is up. Apologies, Monsieur Savard-Tremblay.
Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairperson. I'd like to ask the 5 witnesses some quick question in rapid fire. A very straightforward question. Could you answer by yay or nay before we enter back into the fray? Are you in favour of lifting vaccine mandates for those returning, coming back to Canada? We'll start with in-person witnesses. Are you in favour of lifting these mandates?
Peut-être pour ceux et celles qui sont...
And for those online, please, now.
Someone?
S'il vous plaît, nos témoins.
Please, our witnesses online, if you could respond with yes or no. Are you in favour of lifting this requirement?
Want to go forward first?
I personally would be in favour, yes.
Okay. Mr. Weber?
Not a public health expert.
I would choose the same response.
Parfait, je vous remercie. Peut-être
Thank you very much. So in that case, for those who gave me a straightforward yes, is the vaccine mandate the problem or the app per se, in your opinions?
So I think because the vaccine mandate only applies for outbound travel, you're not using ArriveCAN for outbound travel. So I think in that sense, it's slightly been decoupled based on the announcement that was made this week. The caveat I would give, though, is because you're now going to have the ability for unvaccinated individuals to travel, they have to come back into Canada. And that's where I think you're going to see additional bottlenecks created because they have to go through the ArriveCAN verification.
The fact that you've got both the ArriveCAN app and the change in the vaccine mandate that was announced this week, it's just made it much more confusing for Canadian travelers and for international travelers who are, considering Canada as a destination.
L'application.
Well, the ArriveCAN app requires proof of vaccination. You have to enter that in at some point. I remember I used it a couple of weeks ago. But in any event, let me turn to the Customs and Immigration Union, Mr. Weber, and also the Ms. Bain, those who refuse to say yes because on the basis that you're not public health experts. How can we do this without the app? How can we achieve what you want to do without the app?
I think what the industry needs to hear is what are the benchmarks that need to be achieved before these types of restrictions can be removed. I think having that information and having that communicated and shared would help the industry to know how to plan and to know what to expect. I think the confusion right now is the biggest issue. But as I said, not being a public health expert, I'm not able to say, do I want to let unvaccinated travelers in? But I mean, it is hindering our ability to attract the number of visitors that were previously coming to our destination.
Monsieur Weber.
Mr. Weber, would you like to add something?
Thank you. Yes, if the only requirement is to show proof of vaccination, you simply put the officers back on the front line and ask them to show proof of vaccination. You don't need the application to do that. Again, the idea that this app is easy to complete, I can tell you, you ask anyone working on the front line, it is working all day helping people complete that app. It is not. To say that it is a free app to use when you know what roaming fees are in a foreign country, not to mention that at many of our ports of entry, we don't have Wi-Fi for them to complete it. The app is a big problem.
Mais pourquoi dans ce cas-là, monsieur?
Well, in that case, Mr. Weber, why would it be quicker to show an officer a code than filling this out in advance?
The issue is that it's quite often not filled out in advance, which means cars parked, people at the airport lined up, filling out the app, and us, rather than processing travelers, taking the time to help people fill out the app. You could show me your proof of vaccination on a phone. You simply show it. If that's the only requirements, that's really all you need. That would take a second with an officer.
Okay, thank you very much.
Merci.
On to Mr. Massey for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I can assure you that if every time parliamentarians had to return to the precinct and use ArriveCan, we wouldn't have this app. It would be dropped quicker than anything else. It's particularly frustrating, and I think Mr. Weber's hit it, and I'd like to go with him first. This is really just a resource issue. We're forcing some type of a technology here that's temporary versus that where if you have actually a process, and you just gave a good example of the, you could use your phone to actually just, or have it print off right quickly to the officer. They're capable of doing that, are they not?
Absolutely. And now the few officers that we have left on the front line, because of a lot of these technologies that have been put in, are taking all their time helping people fill out an app.
Yeah, and the ironic thing is that when we started during the pandemic, I mentioned to the previous panel, I had to work with our local CBSA union and Ken Turner down here to actually get them on the list for prioritization for vaccination, because the CBSA officers were left off the original list. And so now they're doing more work by handling people's personal property. Is there any other example that you have of, officers having to deal that with actually taking the phone or using the people's material as they're trying to process themselves at the border?
I mean, yeah, it's everything we could do to help people get the app completed properly so that they can be allowed entry into Canada. Again, it's an incredible drain on resources. It's a drain on time. Again, the app is not the only problem. Our greatly reduced numbers over the years of officers working on the front line is a significant problem as well. Even if the decision is to no longer use the app, the lack of personnel that we have at the front line will still cause delays. That's something that has to be addressed as well.
Agreed. And there's no doubt about that. And that is there's much more effort. And it takes a long time to actually get our officers on the training, and then they're also poached at different times too. So it's a very important position. And I'm going to move over to Ms. Bain. With regards to the affected tourism sector, I think this is what frustrates me a little bit as an MP from an area that's affected by tourism, is that we have a new technology, a new process here that's different than the rest of the other sectors in Canada. And tourism really got the bum's rush with regards to support through the pandemic to begin with, but now has this increased continued complication that other industries don't have. Wouldn't it make sense to still support some of those businesses if we're actually going to have a process in place that we know damages the tourism sector?
I think the continued support for the tourism industry is essential. We're seeing businesses suffer with not only the lack of visitation from the U.S. market, but with people's pocketbooks being so affected by inflation and rising prices. Businesses are worried about paying back their CEBA loans. So, there's really a lot of concern right now and angst with our small tourism operators with some of these financial constraints. And, with what was supposed to be an exciting season to be looking to welcome, they're a bit fearful right now and hesitant to invest and to expand. There have been great supports. I think the Tourism Relief Fund was a welcomed resource for a lot of these operators, but it was only able to touch so many. So there are those that struggle with technology as far as applying for those supports, and understanding the technology is really an issue.
Yeah, and when we had the Western Hemisphere Travel Initiative start being the requirement of passports, there was a grace period that we got so that the travel industry could actually help coach their own customers on how to actually get their passport, the changes that are coming. But that's not possible in this case because they can't get over there if they don't have the app to begin with. And so they're really, tourism operators are really terribly victimized because they really can't even help their own customer base.
Yeah, we've developed a website called crossingmadeeasy.com that was actually through the Western Hemisphere Travel Initiative, and it's been brought back to life because we're trying to get to those people. Our phones do ring off the hook, actually, in our office for Americans confused, and we spend a lot of time walking them through how they can cross, and sometimes they just get frustrated and give up. I myself was crossing through a marine vessel on the weekend, and I had to personally do the app for 8 people because they were getting so frustrated. Going over to the U.S. side, it was a breeze. It was 2 minutes. We had our approval quickly. Coming back took an hour and a half.
Yeah,
Thank you
with
very
the passport waiting times, we've had people get in cottage industry, just like $15 an hour for students. Maybe they'll start charging people to actually make money to download the app for people.
Thank you very much, Mr. Massey. On to Mr. Lewis for 4 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. McLaughlin, I could speak for over 5 hours with you, sir, with regard to being an outfitter, because I myself am an outfitter as well. So perhaps please do reach out to my office. I'd love to have a chat with you on that front, specifically with regard to Northern Ontario and how it can help out the outfitters. I'm going to direct the last 3 minutes and 45 seconds of my questions to Mr. Weber. Mr. Weber, I too, so my riding of Essex, of course, very close, the neighbor is Mr. Massey. And I also know Mr. Turner as well. And so I've had, in my role as Shadow Minister for Labor, I've spoke to Mr. Turner at length. And I understand it to be true, and I would love to hear your feedback, sir, with regard to the frustration at the CBSA officers working at the borders and the redundancy of the job they're doing. Could you please speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely, I can. I hear it, and we're talking specifically about Southern Ontario, but I hear it across the country everywhere I go. Our job is to keep Canadians safe. Our job is to enforce laws at the border, to facilitate travel. The enforcement aspect of our job is almost gone at this point. Our job is almost predominantly getting travelers through as quickly as we possibly can, helping people fill out the ArriveCAN app. Again, the technologies we put in place and the technologies that are being planned with eGate pick machines at the airport that are already there, they've greatly reduced the number of travelers we interact with. They've greatly reduced our ability to interdict anything that Canadians want us to be interdicting. The job has become predominantly about facilitation and just helping people fill out the app. And again, that kind of assembly line of just keep the line moving. The CBSA has come to us with a summer action plan where they're looking at things such as mandatory overtime for our officers, just to take care of that backlog because of the lack of staff and the extra time involved because of the ArriveCAN app. People are being pulled off assignments to put staff back on the front line. It is a desperate situation. And we're talking about the ArriveCAN app, but the lack of staffing that we have frontline at our borders after the summer, that does not go away. And that's been around for a long time. We had that little reprieve during the pandemic, but that situation has been getting progressively worse for years. And again, the focus is not about us doing our jobs. It's simply about moving people through as quickly as possible.
Thank you, Mr. Weber, and through you, Madam Chair, back to Mr. Weber, our witness. So let's just talk about the staffing then just for a moment. So my biggest concern, again, so the busiest international border in North America, the largest amount of commerce, the trade that goes back and forth. We're not only talking about folks that go back and forth to Michigan to grab some groceries for the day or to go watch a ball game. We're talking about people that are literally keeping our commerce going. So I'm just curious, sir, is there do you believe that it may be true that this keeping ArriveCAN could be an opportunity for the government to come back to cut back on staff, on CBSA officers?
That's absolutely the fear. That's essentially what we've seen happen at our airports. As the pick machines took over, the number of staff working frontline at the airports has gone down and down and down and down and down over the years, to the point where we don't have the people in place to interact with travelers, to verify their declarations. You're almost, when it's busy, going purely with what the traveler's declaration is. And that enforcement aspect or verifying declarations. I mean, obviously, anyone who's trying to bring something into Canada that they shouldn't, or is coming into Canada to do something that they shouldn't be doing, is never, ever putting it on their declaration. And the real fear is that the expansion of the ArriveCAN app will see that expanded to land borders as well, where you pre-declare, you go through an automated e-gate kind of system, and you have absolutely no interaction with a border services officer. That would allow the CBSA to reduce those frontline staff numbers again. That's really the fear. Again, I've not heard specific plans of that for the ArriveCAN app, but one could see it going there.
Thank you, Mr. Weber.
Thank
On to Mr. Varani for 4 minutes.
Thank you. So I'll go a little bit fast here, and I appreciate that most people have been pretty straightforward, indicating that we're not public health experts, and that would be yours truly included. But I'm going to ask some questions, I guess, first to Mr. Agnew, since I'm most familiar with you and you're most familiar with this committee. So good to see you again. You start out by saying that obviously businesses in Canada were heavily affected by COVID. That's a fair statement, right? Pretty much. And as I think Mr. McLaughlin indicated, that there was a lot of supports that were put in place during COVID, including the wage subsidy, including CEBA, things like that, that helped keep some businesses afloat and retain workers. That's fair?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, and those would have applied to businesses that you represent, the same types of businesses that David was mentioning. And the basic proposition, I guess, is that limiting the spread of COVID just helps people stay engaged with the economy. Is that fair?
That's be correct.
Okay. And do we agree that vaccines help limit the spread of COVID? Perhaps not every variant, as we're seeing with Omicron, but for the most part, they help limit the spread of COVID. Is that fair?
Yeah, I mean, certainly that seems to be what public health agency tells me, in reducing the adverse medical outcomes, hospitalizations, et cetera.
Yeah, and I appreciate neither of us are sort of medically trained, but I would agree with you. So I'm just trying to put to you things that I take as sort of generally understood. So what I remember during the height of the pandemic is that businesses that tangentially you represent were asking me about how do we protect our staff. And that's when things like vaccine mandates started to get mooted as ideas that, the servers in my restaurant don't want to come to work because they're literally worried that the patrons that are coming in, that they'll be serving at the table, they'd like to know that those persons are vaccinated. It makes them feel more comfortable. It helped the business owner of the restaurant retain the servers. Is that fair? And did you hear similar sort of commentary during the course of the pandemic?
Yeah, I mean, not everyone was uniformly happy about the mandates being imposed in the business community, but certainly there was a boost of confidence for a lot of folks. But I think, though, with where we are in the pandemic, certainly attitudes within the business community have changed about how to apply vaccine mandates given where we are now.
And I'm hearing that loud and clear, and that I think informs part of the decision that you saw getting changed last week. But I guess it seems to me where we're at is that if we understand that vaccines help limit the spread of many COVID variants, but perhaps not the most recent one, and that understanding vaccination status helps businesses writ large, then it's sort of a question of sort of what are we doing in terms of checking vaccination status, and if we're checking it, how do we check it? So I'm just going to turn to you, Mr. Weber, because I guess, and you've been pretty blunt, so I'm going to be pretty blunt, but I guess I wanted to put to you the evidence that we heard in the last half an hour, which is that checking on paper could take 6 to 7 minutes versus checking an app. If it's been done correctly, it takes 45 seconds. I presume you heard that testimony. Do you disagree with that testimony that you heard from Madame Levesque and from Mr. Vinette?
I absolutely do. Those times are absolutely inaccurate.
Because from your perspective, what your staff are doing is helping people with an app. Is that?
Yes, and an app that is about a quarter of the time not completed or started when people arrive at the border. So you can imagine the numbers.
Okay, and I'm just going to apply a bit of lawyer's logic here, so please forgive me. But I guess you're here representing the union. You're here to protect your members. That makes sense. I get it. But you've indicated concerns not just with this form of digitization via the app, the ArriveCAN app, but also the PIC kiosks. So, are there any technological innovations that you and your union do support at our borders?
We support technological innovations as long as the officers are still in place to do the work. What we're seeing now is that the officers or numbers are being greatly reduced as the technology gets increased. So a technology like a PIC machine really doesn't work if you have no officers available to verify people's declarations. You essentially, I would say for lack of a better way of putting it, don't really have a border if that's all it is. If everyone could come in and it's just a self-declaration.
Well, I guess you and I will disagree whether we have a border, but
thank you all
I guess
very
I just
much.
note for your edification that many of the cuts to the CBSA services actually predate our government coming into office.
Monsieur
So I presume you're aware of
Savard-Tremblay,
that.
you
Thank
have 2 minutes, please.
En 2 minutes.
Well, 2 minutes. I'll ask everyone this question. Anyone can comment. Public Health has said to get ready for a new wave. So there'll be still public health measures. How do you reconcile those health measures with the technology that we have? If we don't have ArriveCAN, what will we use?
Whoever would like to answer, please go ahead on limited time.
I think you put the officers in place to process the travelers as they come through one at a time and use those resources rather than having them help complete an app that clearly people are having a very difficult time completing.
Perspective, and I don't want to sound too philosophical about it. The technology is ultimately reflection of the policy, and I think from our standpoint, we recognize there will be another wave of COVID at some point. But I couldn't tell you what the plan is right now. We've been asking for a plan, and we hope that the government will produce one for how we're going to respond to this. Because reverting back to lockdowns and imposing sort of the tools that we used in the earlier waves is not a situation that we'd want to go back to, ideally.
Et s'il devait continuer.
And were there to be ongoing public health measures, how would you help cross-border businesses?
A brief answer, please, Mr. Agnew.
I mean, I think it's hard to have a crystal ball to know for sure how we'd help them. But I think what we need to make sure, though, is that there actually is a plan in place that is durable, because we can't keep flip-flopping around like we've seen.
Thank you very much, Mr. Massey, for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. To Mr. Weber again, with regards to the training that's necessary, how long does it train an officer? Does it take to train an officer?
Rigaud College is an 18-week program. Then there's 1 year of essentially apprenticeship before you become a full officer.
So even ramping up, it's going to take so much time that we should have been on this before. We should never cut. That's another story. And again, with the documentation that you're suggesting to hand over, I mean, we do that with passports. Other documents are asked to be. We're essentially getting with ArriveCAN a Nexus program, but not the screening that Nexus provides. So if you don't actually see anybody, then you also have your members trained to interact with people so they understand their personalities, and they also can target behaviors. Is that not correct?
That's correct, yes.
Yeah. So we're diminishing public safety. Is that why you said that at the beginning of your remarks? Is that diminishes public safety?
That is absolutely the case. Like I said, our officers who go through all this training, specifically on how to enforce the law, interdiction indicators, all that kind of thing. That's essentially not being used. When I use the term IT consultants, that's pretty close to what most of our jobs are now.
So ironically, and I'll quickly finish, Madam Chair, is that when you get your ArriveCAN done, one of those things you're told to do, they should do, is to take a picture like I did on my ArriveCAN thing, so that if it happens to be failing, you could hand it to the officer, so the officer can look at it. So which is the same thing as if you present them with the documentation that you had your own vaccination to begin with, making it all redundant. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Massey. Our last speaker is Mr. Baldinelli for 4 minutes, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I'd like to thank all the stakeholders for being with us today. It's already June 15th. 75% of the tourism revenues are going to be generated within, 25% of the year, which is, June onwards, only 4 months. The tourism sector will look to generate those 75% of the revenues that they need. You had all mentioned the importance of American visitation, and the continued use of ArriveCAN is placing a great impediment onto the free flow of visitors into Canada, and is actually serving as a disincentive to want to come to Canada. So, Ms. Potter, to you, do you believe that the continued use of ArriveCAN places the 2022 tourism year in jeopardy?
It certainly is having a negative impact on the number of international visitors that are arriving. The forecasting that we've seen looks at different countries and how fast we expect that they will come back. Right now, the U.S. will be the last country to get back to 2019 numbers, and it will take us until almost 2026 to do so.
Excellent. And in my own community, again, American visitation is about, 23%, 25% of our visitor base, but they account for over 50% of the revenues that are generated. Again, in 2019, the best tourism year in my community, we generated $2.4 billion in tourism receipts, and that's at risk because of the impact that this border, the difficulties that we're having is placing on the industry. And you had indicated earlier, following the budget, several of the programs were ended. No additional dollars were provided. So my rationale to the government is saying, listen, if you're not going to provide any additional supports to the tourism sector, you've ended the programs that the stakeholders had asked to be extended. Let them do what it is they do best, and that is to welcome people from throughout the world. And that's my call to the government. Let's stop the mandatory use of this ArriveCAN application. And would you agree with that?
I would, and for day visitors, and we have 10 million day visitors coming across the border from the U.S. every year. For day visitors, it's really hard for them to complete the ArriveCAN app because they don't have an address in Canada to which they're going. They don't have a place in which they can quarantine, and so they are having a really big challenge. And thus, we are seeing up to 50% less U.S. travelers coming across for day trips. As it stands right now, including seniors on group travel on motor coaches. I was talking to some of our duty-free stores just last week, and where they would normally get 50 motor coaches coming through their store on a weekend, they're now getting 2.
Last question, if I could, and this is to Mr. Weber. And you had indicated some of the difficulties and the role that your officers are playing. You're saying they're assuming a role more of an IT consultant in assisting Americans who simply don't know about the application when they reach the border. The government indicating today that they're buying billboards. Well, that's totally insufficient. But I wanted to ask this question. Did the government actually approach the union to discuss the implementation of the ArriveCAN for the officers and how it would be implemented and how it would impact staff?
We've not been consulted at all on anything as it was planned, rolled out. Again, you would think that they would ask the people who work on the border every day how best to do things at the border, but that simply wasn't the case. Yeah.
Ms. Dillon, I can probably squeeze in one question if you'd like.
Yes, sure. My question is for Mr. Agnew. According to you, what kind of epidemiological indicators are considered when determining lifting or reinstating public health measures at the border?
You're talking about reinstating the ones that were lifted this past week. So that's a question outside of my expertise, and I'll readily admit that. My wife would love to hear me say this on the record that I do get it wrong, and I don't always know the answer. So I'll clip and save that for her. But kidding aside, I think if the government does have a plan, I haven't seen it. And I think it's really critical that we use the period right now for the government to talk to industry about what is the plan to live with COVID-19 in the endemic phase, if I'm allowed to use that as a non-epidemiological expert.
But would you take into account the global epidemiological context yourself as well, putting government aside?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think everything we do in the pandemic response should look at the global, situation, and that's in part, for instance, why we're saying we should be lifting things like vaccine mandates because other countries have gone down, that direction. So absolutely, what's going on globally is going to be important.
Perfect. Thank you.
Witnesses, and I have to move adjournment. Thank you.